We've seen the role of the certificate authority now in the issuing of digital certificates, but it can do other things and it has other important roles. And one that I've certainly gotten accustomed to over the last 8 years, although accustomed to might be a rough way of putting it. Companies that want to prove to online customers that they have a legitimate company, that they really exist, etc., you can get a secure certificate, rather an SSL certificate, from Verizon and GoDaddy, and there are other companies for it as well. If you do a search on SSL or SSL certificate here in Google, you're going to get the usual paid ads here immediately, but of course there's one from GoDaddy, there's Symantec, there's Namecheap.com. Alrighty then. Not okay. We'll just leave that one alone. Starfield Tech, some other companies here that are renowned for their SSL certificates. A quick real-world word of warning for you. If your website is hosted by one of these companies, they are not going to let you go get a certificate from another company and then install it on your website. Say that if you happen to be hosted by GoDaddy, you are going to have to get your SSL certificate from them. They actually will not allow you to put someone else's on, like say VeriSign or someone like that. And this is a big deal as far as being an internet company goes, because you want to be able to prove to people, yes, I am who I say I am. And again, that trusted third party, the CA, comes in the form of a certificate and says, yes, this is the Bryant Advantage, yes, this is, and here's their address, etc. Because what they do for corporations is they actually look you up in government records and make sure that you have paid all of your monies and fees for being incorporated. Check your corporate status, make sure that hasn't expired, and then they are going to want to contact someone at your company directly whenever they feel like it. And no, you can't call them, they will want to call you. And I joke mostly about this process, but the CA, they've got a lot on the line too. Because if they start getting bad publicity or they're issuing certificates and they go back later and say, oh, we didn't check such and such, it's bad publicity. And of course, you could ended up being pulled out of a certain list we're going to look at later. And it could be very, very bad for their business. So there's a reason, it can be a frustrating experience. And that's not just me talking, which we will come back to in a moment. Another thing you can't do is set up your own internal CA and get a certificate from that CA that will be valid for outside hosts. Nice try, though, but you can't get around it that way. Now, again, it's not always a fun process because, they're giving you a thorough examination and they want to call you and then you're doing something else and then, they get suspicious, etc. But there's a lot at stake for both sides. Now, when you do get that certificate, the CA is also going to let you know, first off, for how long that certificate is valid. Because it's kind of like many of the routing adjacencies that we've built as CCNAs and CCNPs, they're not permanent. We have to keep them alive somehow, and usually that involves giving the CA money. But it does make sense that once you get a certificate, it's not going to be good, for eternity. That probably wouldn't be a smart way to do it. Also, you're going to get a URL of the location of a list of certificates that have been revoked for one reason or another. And that's the CRL, the Certificate Revocation List. Because if you do things that the certificate provider doesn't want you to do with that certificate, they can revoke it. Believe me, they can do it just about any time they get ready, and you really don't have an appeal. I personally haven't been through that, but I know one company that has been. Now, if you want to see the public key of your browser's trusted CA, or CAs I should say, you should head for the list of Trusted Root Certification Authorities. Now we're going to look at that in two different browsers. I'm going to bring up Internet Explorer, boo, and Google Chrome here in a moment, two very popular browsers. Of course, if you're using a different browser, it's got to be in there somewhere with your internet options, but I will show you exactly where to look in both places. And with Internet Explorer, we're looking at Tools, Internet Options, Content Certificates. So let's go ahead and bring that up. We'll go to Internet Options, and it's going to be in Content. You've got a place here to clear your SSL state. There's also a Publisher section here under Certificates, and then there's a Certificates button. And intended purpose, you could pick Client Authentication, Secure Email, Advanced Purposes, or All. We'll stick with All. We're not going to have any personal or other people certificates here. But then we've got Intermediate Certification Authorities and then Trusted Root Certification Authorities. And let's just pick Baltimore Cyber Trust root, just for the fun of it. When you highlight one, it's going to say certificate intended purposes. This one's authentication, email authentication, code signing. And you want to view it. It's going to give you the validity date right here. It's probably a good idea for your exam too to know some of the values that you're going to see in here. And one of them immediately is going to be, who issued it and what the validity dates are. Then your details. It's going to give you the version number, the serial number, the signature algorithm, the signature hash algorithm, again, the issuer, your valid from and valid to dates, subject, and I know I went through those a little quickly, but here's one we really want to look at, public key. This one's RSA 2048 bits. And this is a pretty good size key. And just a little aside here too, I mentioned in the previous video, whenever we talk about certificate authorities, again, it sounds like a song lyric, but sooner or later it comes down to trust. Somebody's got to trust somebody. And here, if we start to get registered with a CA, how do we know that they're really who they say they are? Because you've got to have the public key really to do that and to authenticate their signature, and it's kind of a catch-22. And the public key is right here, and if some way you can get someone at the company to tell you what the public key is, if you can call them, I don't know any other way to do it because with email contacts that would be rather difficult, I'm sure. But the public key is right here for all these companies. So if you need to verify their public key, the information is here to do that with. Let's see, basic constraints, CA and Pathlet, nothing big there. There's your key usage. It's also going to mention a friendly name. I like that, friendly name. Thumbprint algorithm, and really that's about it. There's even more on certificates here. If you want to click in there and read it, it's going to tell you the version number, the X509 version number, the serial number, issuer. It's a good list right there of all the information you see in there. So that's a good little review for you as well. So that's where we would see all of that information in IE. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and call up Chrome. As we're looking at SSL, whoops. Those are Aston Martins. Those won't be on the exam. Maybe I could get a free car for that very brief semi-subliminal plug. Let's see. Let's go ahead and dig into our options here. What we can do here with Chrome is go into settings. And I did enlarge this a bit. I know the other was a little small. And if you scroll down, you're not going to see the information until you click Show Advanced Settings. And then when you do that, it's going to give you some privacy settings here, what you want to do with passwords and forms. And for network, you can click Change Proxy Settings. And that's going to give you the same little Internet Properties window, exact same information. Here's your certificates. Here's your trusted root certification authorities. And again, you just go from there. But all of them are listed there. There's the America Online Root Authority and some others you should see in here. There's a GoDaddy Class 2, some Microsoft. I'm sure we'll see some Starfield Class 2. There we go. And that's really it. So not a bad idea to know where to drive, so to speak, in each one of those browsers to know where to see that particular information. Now about that CRL, I mentioned earlier that secure certificates have expiration dates. And we may run into situations, though, where we actually want to revoke those. And that could be whether we thought, the private key's been compromised, maybe something's been stolen, and we want to revoke that secure certificate. And the thing is, we need a way to let other hosts know, of course, about a local certificate being revoked. Because as we saw earlier, let me bring the diagram back up. Let's see if I can bring that one particular one back up. We saw, yep. Okay, with the exchange. And that one. Okay, that's not the drawing I wanted, but we can go from here because we remember once Bob and Dan get their secure certificates and they start the authentication process with each other, we walked through that in the last video, we remember that the the CA is not involved in that. So when Bob and Dan start talking after they have their digital certificates, the certificate server doesn't get involved. So how could we let Dan know that something's a little bit amiss? Well, we do that with the certificate revocation list, the CRL. And that's where that list comes in. Now, a CA CRL can get really big. And just like a routing table, you know how we're always trying to keep the routing tables what? Complete yet concise. Well, we do that because the entire routing table is going to be parsed when we want to route a packet because we're looking for the best match. And like a routing table, in a way, the CRL has to be parsed, but this is going to be parsed from top to bottom, looking for the best match, and in the case of the CRL, a match period. So that can take a while. It's still a popular method, but there is an alternative to this. It's called I knew I was going to do that. OCSP, the Online Certificate Status Protocol. And the reason I keep saying OS and then I have to stop myself, when you've been typing OSPF for 15 years as a student and a professional instructor and a NA candidate, NP candidate, IE candidate, it's very difficult not to keep typing OSPF for something that's 4 letters and begins with O. But the Online Certificate Status Protocol, I'm going to bring up a drawing actually in a moment on the very next video. And I'm going to give you an overall view of this. We're not going to go into a great amount of detail on this, but I want you to know, first off, that it does exist, and secondly, where it would come into play, just generally how it works. So we will see that on the next video.